And I call the member for Clark.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Look, credit where it's due. I commend the government for progressing the National Anti-Corruption Commission. This is a good decision, and it's very pleasing to see it now be tabled, debated and hopefully passed by both Houses of Parliament in this sitting fortnight. Of course, it's long overdue, and there are countless examples of alleged corruption in recent years which have very much turbocharged the public's call for some sort of federal anti-corruption agency. And I should add, though, Deputy Speaker, they're not all historic cases. Some are very, very real and some are very, very current. In fact, I was shocked just yesterday to see on the front page, sorry, not on the front page, but within the Australian Financial Review, some very good investigative work by the journalist Liam Walsh, who has discovered that the documentary evidence of what I spoke about on Monday about widespread fraud within the Australian coal industry, documentary evidence was held in the office of the Resources Minister during the previous government. So, you know, the allegations of corruption, they're not historic, they're real and they're live. And in fact, when the Anti-Corruption Commission is set up, I think that's one of the first things I might refer to them, is to find out why documentary evidence of widespread fraud was in the possession of a minister in the previous government, and that minister did nothing about it. Mind you, even if there isn't evidence of corruption, even if we think all is well, there is still a need for some sort of federal anti-corruption agency, because only by the very existence of the agency, the knowledge that there's a cop on the beat, only then can we have confidence that there's not corruption simmering under the surface that we're not aware of. But I do echo, Deputy Speaker, the concerns of many of my colleagues about some aspects of the bill before us. And of course, probably the most talked about deficiency in the bill comes to the issue of the threshold for public hearings. I am firmly of the view that the threshold is much too high, and the words exceptional circumstances really should be removed from the bill, and it should be left to the head of the NACC to decide when it's appropriate or not appropriate. As noted by eminent jurist Stephen Charles AOKC, the exceptional circumstances threshold for public hearings will hamper the proper airing of corruption, as potential new witnesses cannot come forward with additional information if they are unaware that an investigation or hearing is occurring. For example, Deputy Speaker, the additional and compelling evidence about Gladys Berejiklian would not have been discovered if the matter had been heard in private. The absence of a solid definition of exceptional circumstances will likely subject the Commission also to lengthy court challenges, thereby delaying hearings and investigations. Now, Deputy Speaker, the government has contended that the exceptional circumstances threshold is included to prevent damage to a person's reputation. However, considering the Commissioner may already consider such factors in determining whether something meets the public interest threshold in section 73(3), close brackets, the additional exceptional circumstances threshold for public hearings is unnecessary. Moreover, it hinders public confidence that the Anti-Corruption Commission is a transparent and accountable body. And, Deputy Speaker, it is worth noting that polling by the Australia Institute shows clearly that the overwhelming majority of Australians support the NACC being able to conduct public hearings in broader circumstances. So I speak for a lot of people when I go to that issue, Deputy Speaker, and I know it's a concern shared by many of my colleagues, especially on the crossbench. The other deficiency, Deputy Speaker, is getting less attention, but it is important nonetheless, and that's the lack of whistleblower protections. Now, the bill essentially replicates protections from the Public Interest Disclosure Act of 2013. But we know, and the government has already acknowledged, that the PID Act from 2013 is seriously deficient and urgently in need of reform. So why we would cut and paste out of a deficient bill into this bill, out of a deficient act into this bill, it surprises me. So here's hoping that as we race to improve Australia's whistleblower protection legislation, that the NACC, what will be the NACC Act by that stage, is promptly and thoroughly amended itself. Now, of course, Deputy Speaker, an anti-corruption body is very, very important in itself, but it is only one of a group of essential building blocks for cleaning up governance and public administration and politics in this country. Unless we build all of the building blocks, create all of the building blocks and put them together, we won't have an effective solution. So this is fabulous, this bill before us, despite its deficiencies, and it's great to see that it will be realised. But the government has to move very quickly to the other building blocks, which is whistleblower protection, media freedom laws and political donation reform, all of which the government has said it will act on in this parliament, but as always the devil will be in the detail about how effectively they do that. When it comes to whistleblower reforms, I would bring the parliament's attention to a report released just this morning, and I note the member for Bass there was at the launch with me, a report by Griffith University, the Human Rights Law Centre and Transparency International, Protecting Australia's Whistleblowers, the Federal Roadmap. Now this is indeed a roadmap, a blueprint if you like, on what needs to be done to provide effective protection for whistleblowers, and not just protection but also to allow them to ventilate their concerns effectively, both in the public sector and the private sector. This is the blueprint. I wish the Attorney-General could have been there at the launch this morning, but at least I know he's got a copy of this. So as he goes through the process of reviewing the Public Interest Disclosure Act and the relevant sections of the Corporation Act, and now the relevant section of the what will be the NACC Act soon, you know, look at this. It's no good saying the Moss Review of 2016 provides the blueprint, because some of that now is out of date already at 6 years old. That is the blueprint. I also have referred to media freedom laws. If we're going to get rid of corruption in this country, among other things, we need whistleblowers to identify corruption and to speak up. But then we need the media to give voice and publicity to those concerns by the whistleblower. That will do a number of things. It will inform the public, especially when there aren't public hearings going on, and it will also provide some protection to the whistleblower themselves. And in fact, if I can rather indulgently reflect on my own whistleblowing experience 20 years over the Iraq War, it was probably only the extensive media coverage that I got instantly which gave me some comfort personally, but also protected me from the wrath of a very, very angry government. They very quickly would have come to the conclusion they could hardly jail me because I would have become a political prisoner in the circumstances. So media freedom laws. And of course donation reform, Deputy Speaker. That's the other essential building block. Now I did move a private member's bill earlier this year that sought to really clean up political donations, and I was disappointed that it didn't receive the support of either the previous government or the previous opposition, I would add, the current government. Well, I have to put my trust in the Attorney-General when he told me just in recent months that they will move on this. And the sorts of things that are required, Deputy Speaker, when it comes to political donation reform, well, obviously a much lower disclosure threshold, and the figure being used often is maybe about $1,000. So anything over any donation over $1,000, either a single donation or when the sum of small donations reach $1,000, that they be disclosed, and that they be disclosed virtually instantly, perhaps up on the AEC website or some other electronic means so they can be disclosed almost straight away. Speaker, we also need a cap on donations. So not only should we lower the threshold for when donations are disclosed, but we should limit the amount of money that any one donor, be it an individual or some sort of entity, can donate to any candidate or any political party. Because as my old friend Nick Xenophon used to say, if someone donates you $1,000, they support you. If they donate you $100,000, they've bought you. And I think that's a truth. No one hands over huge donations without expecting a return on that investment, and they often get a good return on that investment. So let's bring down to a sensible level the total amount of money that any donor can donate to any politician or candidate or party during any election cycle. And that's another point. Donations should be measured over the election cycle, not one at a time. Also, we could broaden the definition of a donation, Speaker. At the moment, you can have these sort of extra entities. Let's say something like Clubs New South Wales might run a political campaign that favours one political party or the other. Well, I would say that anything that materially benefits a candidate or a politician or a party should be treated as a political donation and recorded as a donation both by the person, both by the what I'm now calling the donor, but also by the candidate or politician or party that is materially benefiting from that expenditure. And talking about expenditure, why don't we, when we're looking at political donations, also limit the amount of money that any of us can spend when we're campaigning? I mean, it was just downright immoral for Clive Palmer to spend $100 million to buy one Senate seat. I don't think you'll find anyone in Australia, apart from one senator and one Clive Palmer, who will think that that was an ethical way to spend that sort of money. We could also have prohibited donors, obviously tobacco and liquor, but what about the gambling industry or the fossil fuel industry? The sorts of big donors that are going around at the moment who are getting a good return on their investment, a very, very good return on the investment. In fact, that might help to explain why the former Resources Minister sat on the evidence of fraud in the coal industry and didn't act on it. It would certainly be a very interesting question for some investigative body to put to the former Resources Minister. So they're the building blocks. They're the building blocks, Speaker. An anti-corruption body, great, and I commend the government. Much improved whistleblower protections, and I understand the government will move on that. Great, another building block. Media freedom laws, so that the whole community can learn of what's going on, and political donation reform. Now, to that end of improving the whistleblower component of our integrity measures, Speaker, I do move an amendment now, a second reading amendment. It's only brief, so I'll read it out. I move that the following words be added after CPI, and those words are, and notes that the bill essentially replicates protections from the Public Interest Disclosure Act 2013, which, given the known deficiencies of the Act, is grossly inadequate, and 2, calls on the government to review whistleblower protections in the bill to ensure that protections for whistleblowers are strong, comprehensive and fit for purpose. B, urgently reform the Public Interest Disclosure Act 2013 and the Corporations Act 2001 and establish an empowered and well-resourced whistleblower protection commissioner to facilitate the effective implementation and enforcement of whistleblower protections. And I'm absolutely delighted that the member for Bass will be seconding that amendment in due course. In closing, Speaker, I'm very proud to stand here today, and I'm very happy to say through you to the Attorney-General, good on the government for finally getting cracking on a federal integrity agency. It still has those deficiencies in the exceptional circumstances. I still hold out hope that the government might drop just 2 words from the bill. And while I acknowledge the shortfalls in the whistleblower provisions in the NACC bill, I do take this opportunity through you, Deputy Speaker, to say to the Attorney-General, as soon as we clean up our whistleblower laws, we need to, at the same time, then amend the NACC Act to ensure that those improvements are transferred across all federal legislation. There's much talk about the PID Act, but there's very little talk about the Corporations Act. And while the amendments to the Corporations Act were well-intentioned, it does seem that they are deficient and they can be improved as well. So I call on members to support my amendment. It's something I think we would all agree with in principle, and it doesn't in any way prevent the bill from progressing. So I do call on members to support my amendment, and I look forward to supporting the amended, or at least the unamended, NACC bill in due course. Thank you, Speaker.